morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today to kick off Monday morning. Hello, Briahna.
Hello, Robby. It's always a pleasure, especially given the early spring that's been delighting us in D.C. over the weekend.
We had a delightful weekend here in the nation's capital, celebrating St. Patrick's Day. A lot of green, a lot of beers for various people, not for me because it's not my drink of choice, but it was a fun weekend for me. You as well? Yeah,
I saw a comedian, Gary Goldman, over the weekend who made a pretty good joke about how he was growing up in the 70s and how things were different to now. And he says, I'm enjoying this DC spring. I remember a time when early springs didn't seem to be a harbinger of climate doom, but nonetheless, the flowers are very pretty.
Got to look on the bright side of life, you know, the penguins and the polar bears can be having a beach party just like the rest of us, sipping a green margarita, which is my drink of choice for the weekend.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're all here to hear what's on deck this week. Today in the news, former Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi defends Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's not-so-kosher comments about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Meanwhile, negotiations over a ceasefire carry on in Doha. And did Tucker Carlson edit Kate Middleton's photo? All this and more is coming up. But first, former President Donald Trump spoke up this weekend at a campaign rally in Ohio. Let's take a listen.
I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion. These are animals, okay?
It didn't stop there. He went on to say the following. Let's take a listen.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
So many liberals likened his speech to that made on January 6th, but his campaign quickly fired back, defending the former president's comments, saying his words were taken out of context and that he was in fact referring to China and President Xi's plan to manufacture cars in Mexico, not to the election. Campaign spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt clarified, telling NBC Biden's policies will create an economic bloodbath for the auto industry and auto workers.
Well, conservative media personalities and lawmakers took to X to back Trump's remarks. Sean Parnell called out NBC for suggesting Trump warned of a bloodbath if not reelected, writing, NBC pushing the bloodbath hoax, now unreal. These news agencies need a complete overhaul. Billionaire and ex-owner Elon Musk denounced the NBC's headline, calling it deceptive as he was referring to the auto industry. Shame on NBC. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi blasted Trump's comments while speaking to CNN's Dana Bash Sunday.
He's even predicting a bloodbath. What does that mean? He's going to exact a bloodbath? There's something wrong here. How respectful I am of the American people and their goodness. But how much more do they have to see from him to understand that this isn't what our country is about?
Pelosi also added that Trump should not be trusted with intelligence information. So this really blew up over the weekend. And frankly, and I'm interested to see what you think about it, but it looks to me like the media did step in another total.
It's ridiculous.
It's very clear what he's referring to in this case when he says bloodbath. And of course, people were able to find the approximately 8 gazillion other times mainstream media figures have themselves described like a routine reshuffling at the DNC as a bloodbath. You know what I mean? Like that's a go-to word in media headlines. It is very clear that he was saying that this would be bad for the auto industry if Biden and Biden policies coming back into power. People are free to debate that. It is the kind of metaphor or colorful language that is not even unique to Trump. That specific phrase is one beloved by that terminology by the media and other.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. I saw a lot of people on the left defending Donald Trump over this too, because this is one of those instances, Ryan Grimm was among them, where your choice to make a mountain out of nothing, less than a molehill of commentary from Donald Trump, one, detracts from your ability to talk about real substantive things that he is saying that are a real problem. And it also contributes to the lack of confidence in mainstream media to not have such an overwhelming bias that you don't look at 3 paragraphs. If you look at the transcript of what he said, there's 3 back-to-back paragraphs about his relationship with Xi and what's going to happen with auto manufacturing, and you can't just build use all this cheap labor out of Mexico and then ship these cars into America and ruin our manufacturing industry. No, 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 we're going to put tariffs on this. He says, no, we're going to put 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars if I get elected. Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. Like, we can read.
And the media's doing that meme with the butterfly. Is this political violence?
Like, it's so bizarre. We can read. We can see what he said. So I saw Ryan going back and forth with Aaron Rupar, who's one of these, liberals who clips a lot of stuff, and many of his clips are what goes viral and informs people on Twitter, and that provides a useful function. But his slant on it was this bloodbath slant. Like, this is an anti-democracy statement, that he's going to do another January 6th style statement. And he just doubled and tripled down the more that Ryan just was like, look, by the way, Ryan offered up, here's something else he said in this speech that was legitimately bad that I will agree with. But Aaron Rupar insisted on characterizing it characterizing Ryan rather as like a Trump supporter. It's bizarre.
I saw Joe Scarborough really losing his mind about this, and Mika Brzezinski, was started talking about it. But then she, to be clear, like Trump was saying, if he loses, there's going to be a bloodbath, and what he means is it's going to be a bad economic situation.
Right.
And then, but she, in her characterization, said he's promising if he wins, there will be a bloodbath. That's actually exactly the opposite of what he said. But she's going into the whole, when he said he promised to be a dictator on day one, which again I think was a very inadvisable comment and can spook people.
Right.
And then when he tried to have that back and forth with Sean Hannity about it, Sean tried to talk him into saying a soft version. Well, you mean repealing environmental executive orders, which doesn't really make you a dictator, which I agree. And that's fine. That's just a policy choice.
And Trump wasn't picking up on what
Trump
he was putting
like,
down.
No, dictator. So look, it's fair to call him out, but just don't have this fainting couch hysteria about it. Don't have this the sky is falling, because this is part of the lack of trust people have in the media anymore. And Nancy Pelosi was so despicable, frankly, for playing it. She absolutely knows better.
Absolutely.
I do not believe there is any doubt in her mind that she knows exactly what he was referring to with those bloodbath comments. It is of the same kind of thing that any Democrat or other Republican would say.
Right.
She knows better, and she was just adding fuel to the fire. Not literally. I'm not accusing her of actually pouring gasoline
Nancy
on fire
Pelosi,
here.
arsonist, says Robby Soave of the Hill.
Oh, it's just so obvious. So obvious. So, look, the media needs to do a better job, or we're going to just totally do 2016 over again in terms of the hysteria. Again, oppose Trump. Dislike things about him. Say, if you disagree with those policies, you can explain why you think they're wrong. I think more tariffs on Mexico would actually be bad for a lot of people who want to buy cars in Mexico. I have plenty of things to say about, or in the U.S. rather. I have plenty of things to say about the policy itself, but the language. And it speaks to they're not going to. We're still waiting to find out. How often are they going to air his comments when he does say something genuinely out there with respect to the previous election or things like that? Mm-hmm. Are they actually going to be showing people what he has to say? Because at the end of the day, it's not the media's job to say this was hurtful and I have to protect your delicate ears, viewers and readers. Right. And we'll see.
And I'll say this, I alluded to the fact that Ryan offered some actually problematic things that Trump had said as an offering to those who might think that you're just trying to defend Trump on some ideological basis. Apparently at the same speech, he was caught on a hot mic saying, Kim Jong-un speaks and his people sit up in attention. I want my people to do the same. Now, you can think that's a big deal or a little deal, but comparing oneself to an actual dictator, hey, maybe that's what you run with if you're wanting to frame Trump as a dictator that people should be fearful of and who's going to undermine democracy. But to take an argument, frankly, a popular argument that he makes about American economic protectionism and try to spin that into he's going to come for your wife and kids and there will be bloodshed in the streets. It is 100% the exact kind of rhetoric that's undermining confidence in mainstream media. And that is how they got to where they got in 2016, I would argue, much more so than Russiagate or some of these other factors that they place all of the blame on.
Very much so. All right, we've got a lot more exciting stories to get to today. Can't wait to talk about them. More Rising right after this.